This issue surfaced again in June 1945 when Churchill permitted Wavell, the previous commander-in-chief who had in 1943 replaced Linlithgow as the new viceroy, to start negotiations with the Indian leaders. Wavell had a clear understanding that India after the war will become a running sore which will sap the strength of the British Empire. India would be ungovernable by force, because a policy of ruthless repression would not be acceptable to the public. So, some imaginative and constructive move needed to be taken immediately, in order to retain India as a willing member of the British Commonwealth. 12 During his visit to London in March 1945, he finally convinced Churchill of the desirability of a Congress-led coalition government in India as a preemptive measure to forestall the political crisis he predicted after the war. He, therefore, convened a conference at Simla to talk about the formation of an entirely Indian Executive Council, with the Viceroy and Commander Commander-in-Chief as the only British members. Caste Hindus and Muslims would have equal representation, while the scheduled castes would also be separately represented, and doors would be open for discussion of a new constitution. But the Simla Conference of 25 June-14 July 1945 crashed on the rock of Jinnah's demand for parity. He claimed for Muslim League an exclusive right to nominate all the Muslim members of the cabinet. Congress refused to accept it, for that would amount to an admission that Congress was a party only of the caste Hindus. Ironically, at that time, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was the Congress president. Wavell called of the meeting, as a coalition government without the League would not work. Aisha J. Allah has argued that at no point between 1940 and the arrival of the cabinet mission in 1946 did either Jinnah or Muslim League ever coherently define the Pakistan Durnand. But it was this very vagueness of the demand that made it an excellent instrument for a Muslim mass mobilization campaign in the 1940s, the primary objective of which was to construct a Muslim national identity transcending class and regional barriers. In addition to its traditional constituency, i.e., the landed aristocracy, Muslim politics during this period began to attract support from a cross-section of Muslim population, particularly from professionals and business groups for whom a separate state of Pakistan would mean elimination of Hindu competition. And to this was added the political support of the leading ulama, peers and Maulvis who lent this campaign a religious legitimacy. Muslim politics at a national level was now being institutionalized, and Jinnah gradually emerged as its authoritative leader, establishing his control over the provincial branches of the League. Those provincial groups or leaders, who did not toe his line, like A.K. Fazlul Huq and his Krishak Praja Party, KPP, in Bengal, or Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan and his Unionist Party in Punjab, were systematically pulled down and politically marginalized. Both Huq and Khan were censored in July 1941 when they agreed to join without Jinnah's approval the Viceroy
National Defence Council.
which in terms of its membership structure did not recognize the Muslim claim of priority. During the closing years of the war, both the KPP and the Unionist Party were gradually shoved out of the political centre-stage in the Muslim-majority provinces of Bengal and Punjab, where Pakistan demand became an ideological rallying symbol that helped overcome the various fissures within a heterogeneous Muslim community. To get to the details of the Bengal story first, Fazlul Huq and his KPP had thrown here a major challenge to the Muslim League in the 193-7 election, but soon after the election, they came to terms with the League by forming a coalition government with them. Huq soon began to lose popularity, as he gravitated more towards Zamindar and rich peasant interests and reneged on a number of election promises given to the tenant and poor peasant constituencies of the KPP. He joined the League in 1937 and was given the honour of introducing the Lahore Resolution in 1940. But he never fully endorsed Jinnah's politics, and in 1941, when reprimanded by him, who resigned both from the National Defense Council and from the Muslim League, with a stinging letter of complaint against the authoritarian leadership style of Jinnah. Although he later retracted his steps, his relationship with the Bengal League members remained strained, particularly when later that year he formed a coalition government with the Hindu Mahasabha, with Shyama Prasad Mukherjee as the co-leader. This progressive coalition ministry was ultimately toppled in March 1943 with the active connivance of the Bengal governor, and a Muslim League ministry was then installed under the leadership of Khwaja Nazaruddin. This boosted League's image. Local branches of the Muslim League were opened throughout Bengal, and a mass mobilization campaign was launched. 116. This campaign was however more symbolic and emotional than programmatic. Pakistan was presented as a peasant utopia, which would bring in liberation for the Muslim peasantry from the hands of the Hindu zarnindas and moneylenders. As a result, by the mid-1940s, Pakistan as an ideological symbol of Muslim solidarity gained almost universal acceptance among the Muslim peasants. Abul Hashim, the Bengal League leader, travelled extensively throughout East Bengal countryside campaigning for Pakistan, and his draft manifesto, that outlined the moral, economic and political objectives of the movement, also appealed to the Muslim middle classes, particularly the students. The Nazimuddin ministry had to resign in March 1945, but by then the Muslim League in Bengal had emerged as the only mass-based political party of the Muslims. 11s. This meant
a virtual political death.
virtual political death of the KPP, many of its younger progressive members having already joined the League, which by now had become, to quote Taj Hashmi, everything to everybody. This popularity was translated into a massive election victory in 1946, with the League winning 93% of Muslim votes in the province and 119 of the 250 seats in the assembly. This was the inevitable result of an election campaign that had been turned into a religious crusade, as the Congress President Maulana Azad later complained. In Punjab, the structure of politics was sharply divided along rural-urban lines. While the Unionist Party held sway over rural politics, the Muslim League acquired a base among the urban Muslims. But the Unionist Party was in control, as Punjab landowners accounted for 60% of its much restricted electorate, organized along agricultural, tribal, constituencies. 1-1 The Unionists, after the 193-7 election, formed a coalition ministry in Punjab with Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan as the premier. But Sikandar soon came to terms with Jinnah through what is called the Jinnah-Sikandar Pact of 1937. Although the alliance was full of tensions, this gave the Unionists some sort of legitimacy among the Punjabi Muslim population, while Jinnah found a springboard to further his mission to project Muslim League as the center of South Asian Muslim politics. Sikandar also contributed to the organization of the 1940 Lahore Conference and to the drafting of the resolution. But he never fully accepted Pakistan as a separatist demand. If Pakistan means unalloyed Muslim Raj in the Punjab, he announced in the Punjab Assembly in March 1941, then I will have nothing to do with it. 122 But Sikandar died suddenly in December 1942, and his mantle fell on relatively inexperienced Malik Khiz Hayat Khan Tiwana. Jinnah continuously pressurized him for more and more political leverage, first to form a Muslim League as Assembly Party and then to rename the coalition government as Muslim League Coalition Ministry. When Khiz refused to oblige and stood his ground, he was expelled from the Muslim League in April 1944.123. Hereafter, Jinnah launched a well-orchestrated mass campaign to popularize the idea of Pakistan in rural Punjab, with the help of some of the disgruntled elements in the Unionist Party, the young enthusiasts of the Punjab Muslim Students' Federation and the Sajjad Nishins, custodians of Sufi shrines, who were now pressed into the political service of Islam. He even befriended the Communist Party, which supported the Pakistan demand. when the peers with their huge rural influence issued fatwas, support for Pakistan became an individual religious responsive. Telegram.me UPSC materials https://telegram.
Responsibility of every Muslim.
Of every Muslim. As the election of 1946 approached, the entire power structure of the Punjabi Muslim community, from the rural magnates and the landowning Jaildar Lambada class which previously supported the Unionist Party, to the ordinary Muslim peasants in western Punjab, all drifted towards the Muslim League. The wartime scarcity and food procurement policy also contributed to this groundswell. 124 If the League undercut the Unionist support base in the west, the Congress did the same in East Punjab. The Akalis mobilized too. So in the election of 1946, the Unionist Party got just 18 of the 175 seats in the Punjab Assembly, Congress got 51, the Akalis 22 and the Muslim League 75, almost sweeping the rural Muslim constituencies. But this did not immediately mean the demise of the Unionist Party, as KIS now cobbled together another coalition ministry with the Congress and the Akalis, much to the chagrin of the Muslim League. 2.s However, although still kept away from power, the election results for Muslim League certainly signaled a popular acceptance of Pakistan as a religious definition of state and community by the Punjabi Muslims. The Muslim League also did reasonably well in the election in the other Muslim-majority province of Sindh, and in the whole of India it got 74.7% of votes in the Muslim constituencies. 126 Although the electorate was heavily restricted, about 10% of the population, this was interpreted as a popular mandate for Pakistan. An unfettered Hindu Raj or Pakistan, Jinnah had announced in an election meeting, that is the only choice and only issue before us. 127 The League, claims Anitha Inder Singh, had thus presented the elections as a plebiscite for Pakistan. 12s And the victory certainly made it the only constitutionally legitimated representative of the Indian Muslims, the center of the South Asian Muslim political universe. As Jinnah had dreamed of it, the election of 1946 also brought a popular mandate for Congress, which won majorities in every province except Bengal, Sindh and Punjab, winning 80.9% of votes in the general constituencies. For Congress too the issue was singular: only one thing counts, announced its election manifesto, the freedom and independence of our motherland, from which all other freedoms will flow to our people. 129 These election results also marginalized all other non-Muslim political parties, like the Communist Party winning only 8 seats, the Hindu Mahasabha with only 3 seats, and Dr. Ambedkar's All India Scheduled Castes Federation bagging just 2 of the 151 seats reserved for such castes. This was undoubtedly the outcome of the wave of patriotism generated by the Quit India movement,
from
which Congress had emerged with unprecedented legitimacy as the representative of the Indian political nation, and then it successfully tied up its election campaign with the ENA agitation, a strategy in which S. Gopal has smelled a touch of escapism. T.P. But it was a movement that attracted almost universal approbation of all sections of the Indian population, and by supporting it Congress remained at the forefront of a situation that created immense possibilities for the future of India. Although it is difficult to establish any direct link between the ENA agitation, the subsequent naval mutiny and the political turmoil they generated with any immediate and perceptible change in imperial policy, it is quite probable, as P.S. Gupta has surmised, that the situation, particularly the more mass-based ENA agitation, led to the sending of a cabinet mission. 132 However, on 19 February 1946, the day after the Aryan mutiny broke out in Bombay, when Clement Attlee announced the proposed visit of a cabinet mission, as R.J. Moray has shown, The uppermost concern in official mind was that of imperial defense, and for that purpose a united India was considered to be in Britain's best interests. 1. The three-member mission that visited India between March and June 1946 was headed by Lord Pethick Lawrence, the Secretary of State for India, and included Sir Stafford Cripps, now the President of the Board of Trade, and First Lord Admiralty Mr. A.V. Alexander. Its brief was to discuss two issues: the principles and procedures for the framing of a new constitution for granting independence, and the formation of an interim government based on widest possible agreement among Indian political parties. But agreement proved to be elusive, as the two major political parties in India had now become more intolerant about their contradictory political agendas. Between 7 and 9 April 1946, the Muslim League Legislators Convention in Delhi defined Pakistan as a sovereign independent state, consisting of the Muslim-majority provinces of Bengal and Assam in the northeast and the Punjab, northwest frontier province, Sindh and Baluchistan in the northwest. 134 On the other hand, on 15 April Maulana Azad, the Congress President, declared that complete independence for a united India was the demand of the Congress. 135 The Cabinet Mission rejected the proposal of a sovereign Pakistan with 6 provinces as a non-viable concept and offered instead, on 16 May after wide consultation across the political spectrum, a three-tier structure of a loose federal government for the Union of India, including both the provinces and the princely states. There would be a union government at the top, in charge only of defense, foreign affairs and communication. Harmonious whole, and by the mid-1940s they were preparing for an ultimate showdown by giving their volunteer groups military training. 144 This was the period which witnessed, to quote Das, the convergence of elite and popular communalism, creating a general environment of distrust and tension between the Hindus and the Muslims, that finally exploded in August 1946. As a chain reaction to the Calcutta carnage, riots broke out in the districts of Chittagong, Decca, Mymensingh, Barisal and Pabna. But the worst came in October in the two southeastern districts of Noakhali and Tipura. If in Calcutta the two communities shared the casualties almost equally, here the Hindus were mostly on the receiving end, as Muslim peasants, in very systematically orchestrated attacks, destroyed Hindu property, raped their women and killed several thousands of them. 14s It was not just Bengal that witnessed such communal polarization at a mass level. Christophe Jethre Lott, 1996, has shown that almost the entire North Indian Hindi belt was experiencing the same communal build-up in the 1940s. If the Muslim minorities organized themselves around the rallying symbol of Pakistan and were raising disciplined paramilitary volunteer organizations as the Muslim National Guard, 146 The Hindus did not fall behind in organizing and simultaneously stigmatizing their threatening others. This can be gauged from the growing popularity of the overtly Hindu nationalist organization, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, RSS, which focused primarily on the social and psychological construction of the Hindu nation. The number of its volunteers, Swayamsevaks, rose from 40,000 in 1938 to 76,000 in 1943 to 600,000 by the beginning of 1948. More interesting is the regional distribution of this disciplined and well-drilled volunteer corps. The RSS was most strong in Bihar, the Bombay region, the central provinces, Greater Punjab, including Delhi and Himachal Pradesh, and UP. Here the RSS appealed to the students and youth, who were attracted to paramilitary training, were distrustful of Gandhian methods, and nurtured deep anti-Muslim feelings. And the organization was generously patronized by the Hindu Mahasabha leaders, the Arya Samajas and the Maharajas of certain princely states where Muslim minorities had of late become articulate and militant. It was no wonder, therefore, that the communal fire that was kindled in Calcutta soon engulfed the whole of the subcontinent. Riots began in Bombay from 1 September, in Bihar from 25th October and in Mukkeswar in UP from November, and in all these places Hindus were primarily in the offensive. 14s The news.
The news of the killing of Muslim travelers.
Killing of Muslims travelled with survivors to such far-off lands as the northwest frontier province, where a Congress government was in power, facing a civil disobedience campaign by local Muslims. The Perhan Code of Honor made them identify with their victimized community, and the cycle of vengeance continued. Pathan tribesmen, instigated by local peers, began to attack local Hindus and Sikhs from December 1946 in Dera Ismail Khan and Tonk. Their primary target was property rather than life, yet, by April 194 over 100 Hindus and Sikhs were killed. The worst communal inferno ravaged Punjab since March 194. Trouble started brewing when the Unionist ministry, on the advice of Governor Jenkins, banned the Muslim National Guard and also the RSS in January. This led to the launching of a civil disobedience movement by the League, which organized protest demonstrations and processions, participated by hundreds of thousands of ordinary Muslim men and also women. The ministry ultimately resigned on 2nd March in the face of mounting discontent, plunging the region into chaos and disorder. The chief target of Muslim attack was Hindu property. The latter retaliated as well, and Muslims lost about 4,000 shops and houses in just 1 week in March 194. And then in the following 3 months, according to official accounts, about 3,500 people died in Punjab and properties worth 150 rupees million were damaged. But this was nothing in view of what was yet to come to Punjab in the wake of partition, and in that mindless mayhem, all communities, to quote Ian Talbot, had blood on their hands. So Viceroy W. Oval had in the meanwhile managed to constitute an Indian interim government without the Muslim League. A Congress-dominated government was sworn in on 2 September 1946 with Jawaharlal Nehru as the Prime Minister. But it came to a complete impasse when, in late October, the League was also persuaded to join. Nehru sat helplessly while his country was torn asunder by civil war. On 9 December the Constituent Assembly started meeting, but the League decided to boycott it, as Congress refused to accommodate its demand for sectional meetings drafting group constitutions. Only one man still tried to change the course of history. Gandhi almost single-handedly tried to bring back public conscience. He moved alone fearlessly into the riot-torn places from Noakhali to Calcutta to Bihar to Delhi. His presence had a miraculous effect, but this personal effort failed to provide a permanent solution. At the age of 77, Gandhi was now a lonely figure in Indian politics. As S. Gopal succinctly describes it, his role in the Congress was https://telegram.me/upsc materials, https://telegram.me/freeopsk materials, https://telegram.me/material for exam. Freedom with Paralleltion 455 April he produced what is known as Plan Bargain. It proposed the partition of Punjab and Bengal and handing over power to the provinces and sub-provinces, which would be free to join one or more of group constituent assemblies on the basis of self-determination, while the interim government would remain until June 1948. Demission of power to the provinces and the absence of a strong centre would certainly lead to balkanization of India. 156 It is therefore not surprising that Nehru rejected these proposals on the ground that, instead of producing any sense of certainty, security and stability, they would encourage disruptive tendencies everywhere and chaos and weakness. 157 Jinnah cast them aside too, as he was not yet prepared to accept the partition of Punjab and Bengal, which would give him only a truncated or mutilated, moth-eaten Pakistan. 151 The alternative plan that Mountbatten proposed was to transfer power to two successor dominion governments of India and Pakistan. Nehru, who was opposed to the idea of dominion status, was won over, although according to his biographer, he accepted it only as an interim arrangementy. And as for partition, he is reported to have confessed later about the truth that we were tired men and we were getting on in here too. We saw the fires burning in the Punjab and heard every day of the killings. The plan for partition offered a way out and we took it. 11,160 on 3rd June Mountbatten announced his new plan and proposed to advance the date of transfer of power from June 1948 to 15th August 1947. The plan provided for the partition of Bengal and Punjab, the Hindu-majority provinces which had already accepted the existing constituent assembly would be given no choice, while the Muslim-majority provinces, i.e. Bengal, Punjab, Sindh, Northwest Frontier Province and Baluchistan would decide whether to join the existing or a new and separate constituent assembly for Pakistan. This was to be decided by the provincial assemblies. There would be a referendum in the Northwest Frontier Provinces. And in case of Baluchistan, the Quetta municipality and the tribal representatives would be consulted. Nehru, Jinnah and Sardar Baldev Singh on behalf of the Sikhs endorsed the plan the following day 151 and thus began the fast march to transfer of power. But partition still remained a contentious issue. Neither Jinnah nor Muslim League ever defined the rights of non-Muslims in future Pakistan, and this omission, as Jalal points out, proved to be a fatal defect of their scheme. 162 causing anxieties in religious minorities in Punjab and Bengal in Punjab. Since the 1930s the AKG Dal had https://telegram.me/upsc materials https://telegram.me/freeopsk materials https://telegram.me/material for exam. (456) from plus say to partition been speaking of a separate land for the Sikhs. Such demands were reiterated after the Lahore resolution of the Muslim League in 1940. For the first time the proposal of a Khalistan, consisting of territories from Jammu to Jamrud, as a buffer state between Pakistan and India was floated. The Shiromani Akali Dal opposed such separatist claims, but its anxiety to preserve the territorial integrity of the Sikh community increased once the Pakistan proposal was given serious consideration by the Cripps Mission and in the Rajgopalachari formula of the Congress. As a preemptive strike to prevent the possibly leery of their perpetual subjugation to Muslim majority rule, they now began to talk of a distinct Sikh land in eastern and central parts of Punjab, taking Chenab River as the dividing line. This territorial vision of Sikh identity took various expressions, such as Azad Punjab in 1942 or a Sikh state in 1944, but none of these claims were separatist per se. For example, the memorandum of the Sikh Whole Parties Committee to the Cripps Mission asserted their determination to resist the separation of the Punjab from the All India Union. After the abortive Gandhi-Jinnah talks, and in response to the Rajaji formula which they all detested, the Akali leader Master Tara Singh announced in no uncertain words that the Sikhs could not be forced to go out of India into Pakistan. Once the talk of Pakistan became more serious, particularly in the election of 1946, the Akalis decided to move into strategic alliance with the Unionists and later formed a coalition government with them. Before the cabinet mission in 1946, Tara Singh on their behalf once again asserted that they were opposed to Pakistan, but if that eventuality occurred, Punjab would like to remain a separate state, with options to federate with either India or Pakistan. The relationship between the Muslims and the Sikhs deteriorated further following the resignation of the His ministry and outbreak of violence since March 1947. The Akali Dal, patronized by the Maharaja of Patiala, now started mobilizing Jadathas for the defense of Sikh life, property and the holy shrines, and more significantly, called for partition of Punjabi demand, which was ultimately accepted by the Congress in its 8th March resolution. But when partition was agreed upon in the 3rd June proposal on the basis of population, the Sikhs found that they were about to lose significant properties and important shrines in the Muslim majority divisions of West Punjab. So a group, prompted by a few British advisers, now began to advocate a third line, that of opting for Pakistan and having an autonomous Sikh region there, and thus retaining the unity of the Sikh community, at least as a https://telegram.me/upsc materials, https://telegram.me/freeopsc materials, https://telegram.me/material for exam. 458 https://telegram.me/upsc materials, https://telegram.me/freeopsc materials, https://telegram.me/material for exam. Times U.AEC8 CQ11 12 times ounce yen. O we times CIC times 459 times. https://telegram.me/upsc materials, https://telegram.me/freeopsc materials, https://telegram.me/material for exam. .460 from plus say to partition August, when in a brief ceremony at Karachi, the newly designated capital, Mountbatten handed over power by reading a king's message, and Jinnah took over as the first Governor-General of the Dominion of Pakistan. That night the Indian Constituent Assembly met in a special session, where at the stroke of midnight Nehru delivered his now famous, "Tryst with Destiny," speech. When the rest of the world was fast asleep, as he put it in his exemplary flamboyant style, India awoke to life and freedom. The next day he was sworn in as Free India's first Prime Minister and the country plunged into celebrations. But there were many who were not in a mood to celebrate. To register his opposition to partition, Gandhi decided not to participate in any celebration and spent the day in fasting and prayer. The nationalist Muslims felt betrayed too, as the publication in 1988 of the 30 pages of Maulana Azad's book India Wins Freedom, 1957, the pages which remained sealed for 30 years revealed that he was not in a celebratory mood either. Also unhappy were the Hindu nationalists like Veer Savarkar, who had once campaigned for Akhand Hindustan, undivided India, and so the Hindu Mahasabha and the RSS launched a campaign against the celebrations. But the feeling of uncertainty was most dominant in the minds of the minorities, particularly in Punjab and Bengal, where they suddenly found themselves entrapped in an alien land or indeed in an enemy territory. 170 What followed in a little while was the worst-case scenario of communal violence and human displacement that the history of the subcontinent has ever known.
About 1 million people were killed and 75,000 or more women were raped. Trains full of dead bodies traveled across the border in both directions. More than a million people were displaced and began to taste bitter freedom amidst the squalor of the refugee camps. The most well-known victim of this frenzy was Gandhi himself, assassinated on 30th January 1948 by a militant Hindu nationalist. For many Indians, freedom thus came with a sense of loss caused by the partition, while to many Muslims in Pakistan, particularly to their state ideologues, partition itself meant freedom. It is no wonder, therefore, that partition happens to be the most contested discursive territory of South Asian historiography. Just the sheer volume of the literature that has been produced in this field is staggering. We do not have space here to delve into the details of this historiography, other than highlighting a few major trends. This historiography begins its career with a focus on the elite, the leaders of the two principal parties, the Congress and the Muslim League being
chief actors in this drama of truly epic proportions. For some Pakistani historians, first of all, the partition was a liberatory experience, a logical culmination of a long historical process that had started in the 19th century by Sayyid Ahmed Khan and others, when the South Asian Muslims began to discover their national identity that was articulated later in the complex subcontinental politics of the 1940s.1134 Aitsaz Ahsan. Partition was a primordial divide, a divide that is 50 years young and 5,000 years old. 174 as Akbar Ahmed argues, the concept of Pakistan was irresistible and widespread among the Muslims. In 1947 they forced a separation, and thus claimed for themselves a separate history of their own. 175 and the chief architects of this history were Jinnah and the leaders of the Muslim League. As opposed to this position, there are other important works, which have questioned the inevitability and legitimacy of partition. The works of Omar Khorram, 1977, Stanley Wolpert, 1984, Anita Inder Singh, 1987, R.J. Morey, 1988, Ian Talbot, 1988, Mushirul Hassan, 1993, 1997, and more recently Sucheta Mahajan, 2000, have argued consistently over the period despite some differences in emphases, nuances and semantics that Congress, i.e., its leaders, had stood all along until the very end for a secular united India. But it was Jinnah and his Muslim League which from 1940 began to advocate the two-nation theory, who were ultimately responsible for the sad but avoidable vivisection of the subcontinent. Jinnah's alienation from the Congress began after 193-7, and if he was a little flexible as regards the definition and specifics of the Pakistan demand until Britain announced its decision to quit, it was always on the cards. 176 This interpretation, in other words, rests on two fundamental assumptions is equal to which Asim Roy has described as the two partition myths, i.e., the League for Partition, and the Congress for Unity. A recent, revisionist, history has forcefully challenged these two shibboleths of the familiar party, non-narratives. When Pakistan was ultimately created, it contained 60 million Muslims, leaving behind another 35 million in non-Muslim India. So Aisha Jalal, 1985, launched her revisionist critique by raising an all-important question: how did a Pakistan come about which fitted the interests of most Muslims so poorly? P4, in her view, the Lahore Resolution, which neither mentioned partition nor Pakistan, was Jinnah's tactical move, his bargaining counter, to have the claim of separate Muslim nationhood accepted by the Congress and the British. pp 57-58. The ideal constitutional arrangement he preferred for India at this stage was a weak federal structure. With strong autonomy for the provinces, with Hindu-Muslim parity at the center. His optimism was that Congress, keen on a strong unitary center, would ultimately concede his demand to avoid his more aggressive scheme of separation, which, in fact, he did not really want. p57. But that Congress or the British would never accept partition under any circumstances was a mistaken assumption. Congress in the end did accept partition, and thus Jinnah was beaten in his own game of wits. Asim Roy, in a supportive article for Jalal, therefore, came up with a rather strong emotive statement that it was not the League but the Congress who chose, at the end of the day, to run a knife across Mother India's body. 178 However, this interpretative model, as pointed out by many, attaches even more importance to high politics than the one it seeks to displace. It relies too much on Jinnah's agency and allows too much space to the inner depths of his speculative mind. Even though we agree that Jinnah might have first floated the idea of Pakistan as a bargaining counter, and even Sumik Sarkar admits that it is doubtful if he had the same bargaining autonomy once the mass mobilization campaign began in 1944 around this emotive symbol of Muslim nationhood. Jalal has rectified this imbalance in her analysis in her second book, which focuses on a wider Muslim quest for self and sovereignty, 2000. Here she traces the evolution of a religiously informed cultural identity of the North Indian Muslims from the late 19th century and its enlargement into a claim of nationhood. But this assertion of nationhood, she affirms, did not become a demand for exclusive statehood until the late summer of 1946. Her discussion of popular mentality, it seems, still does not go beyond the newspaper reading and poetry appreciating public, The non-literate Muslims on the streets of Lahore or the peasants in the Bengal countryside remain largely excluded from this narrative until the riots break out in 1946. But the Pakistan movement, as we have already noted, had started embracing a wider public from a much earlier period, as it meant all things to all people. 180 once the riots started, the campaign only reached the point of no return. However, it will be equally fallacious to argue that Jinnah did not lead, but was led by Muslim consensus, for, as Mushirul Hasan has demonstrated, consensus there was none. In Hasan's view,
the two-nation idea was itself grounded in the mistaken belief about such Muslim unanimity. At the political level, the League was equally
faction-ridden and ideologically fragmented, as the Congress was, and at the popular level, even at the height of communal distrust and conflict, there were sizable sections of Muslim and accepted partition as an unavoidable necessity in the given circumstances. 119 for Sumi Sarkar. However, this communalism had not yet been normalized in Indian public life. Indeed, there was more communal harmony at the barricade lines as evidenced in the popular agitations, peasant struggles and industrial actions of the L940s than at the negotiating table. The Congress leadership, instead of harnessing these popular emotions and risking another round of mass movement, accepted the tempting alternative of an early transfer of power, with partition as a necessary price for it. For Sarkar, the communal riots that broke out from August 1946 do not form a part of this popular politics. The subaltern historians, on the other hand, Gyanendra Pandey for example, have argued that the conventional elitist partition historiography has been seriously constrained by its self-imposed aim of establishing the causes of partition. 1. It is for Parth Chatterjee a non-question, as it was all decided by the All India players, and it is historically inaccurate to suggest, at least for Bengal, that the partition campaign involved any significant mass participation. Pandey, therefore, redirects his historical gaze away from the causes to the meaning of partition for those who lived through it, the trauma it produced and the transformation that it wrought. 193 In his view, the truth of the partition lay in the violence it produced, and he, therefore, endeavors to unravel how this violence is conceptualized and remembered by those who lived through partition as victims, aggressors or onlookers. 194 But Pandey is certainly not alone in this new discursive terrain. It needs to be mentioned here that the agenda of partition historiography has significantly shifted grounds in recent years from its previous preoccupation with causes to a greater interest in the experiences. This is proved by the recent spate of publications focusing on the memories of partition, on the creative literature that recaptures this traumatic experience and on the visual representations of that epic tragedy. 195 Historians are now evidently less concerned about causes, and more introspective about the afterlife, or aftermath, of partition in South Asia. 196 In other words, they look at how partition impacted on post-colonial history and politics, how partition memory defines community identities and affect inter-community relations, thus emphasizing a historical continuity. They self-consciously deny the year 194-7 and the foundation of the two nation-states the privilege of being treated as the end of all history. 197 Apart from partition, another thorny issue that figured prominently in this episode of transfer of power in India was the fate 565 princely states after the lapse of British paramountcy. The British Crown, through informal pledges and formal treaties, had committed itself to defending the states in lieu of their surrendering some political rights. But the Labour government decided to wriggle out of that obligation in view of the altered political realities and the practical difficulties of defending the states after the transfer of power to British India. So the Cabinet Mission announced on 12 May 1946 that paramountcy would end with the demission of power and the rights surrendered would return to the states. These would be free to enter into either a federal relationship with the successor state, in British India, or such other political arrangement with them as they would think best suited to their interests. The declaration, therefore, by default, gave an understanding to the princes that they would have the option to remain independent. Nothing was done to rectify this in Mountbatten's Plan Balkan, which simply stated that the states would have the liberty to join one or the other confederation of provinces or could stand out independently. In the 3rd June declaration, the policy towards the states remained unchanged. But then Mountbatten realized that Congress leadership, particularly Nehru and Patel, did not like the idea of independence for the princely states, as this would not only disrupt law and order, but would seriously jeopardize India's future economic development. So he now decided to persuade the princes to accede to India by surrendering rights only in 3 areas, i.e., communication, diplomacy and defense, where they did not previously enjoy any right. Patel, who was now heading the new State Department, agreed to accept the scheme, provided the Viceroy could offer him a full basket of apples. 199 But that was a tough task, as already by early June the rulers of a few larger states, like Bhopal, Travancore, Kashmir and Hyderabad had expressed their desire to choose independence. A beleaguered Viceroy was left with little choice other than resorting to arm twisting, if he had to persuade Congress to accept dominion status and partition. In the end, as Ian Copeland has suggested, accession was facilitated by pressure, subtle, gentlemanly but relentless pressure from the Viceroy and his ministers. 200 YE failed to deliver the full basket. Although by 15 August 194-7, the majority of the princes had signed with a profound sense of betrayal the instrument of accession, IOA, to India, there were some adamant rebels as well. Kashmir and Hyderabad chose to remain independent, Junagadh signed an IOA to join Pakistan, while few other smaller states failed to return the signed documents by the due date.
So ultimately, a strong arm
The strong-arm tactics of Sardar Patel and his deputy V.P. Menon that secured the integration of India. They emphasized the anomalies of the IOA, that such anachronistic monarchical enclaves could not survive in the newly independent democratic India. In course of next 2 years all the princes were pressured to renegotiate their LOA, surrender their rights, open up to constitutional changes and democratization in lieu of fat privy purses and sometimes prestigious sinecures in foreign diplomatic missions, and the states were eventually merged into the contiguous provinces. As for the rebels, Junagadh's ruler was forced to escape to Pakistan. Maharaja Hari Singh of Kashmir had to accede to India and sign an LOA in October 194-7 in the face of a Pathan invasion, thus preparing the context for the First Indo-Pak War of 1948. And finally, the Indian tanks rolled into Hyderabad in September 1948 to smash the Nizam's ambitious dream of independence. 201 The integration of princely India has been a subject of intense controversy. Ian Copeland, 1993-1999, for example, has raised serious and justified questions about the ethics, morality and legality of the unilateral repudiation of the Crown's treaty obligations. He has also chastised Mountbatten for his early indifference to and later overbearing treatment of the princess. The methods used by Patel to bring in the flippant rebels into his basket have appeared to be of dubious legality, to Judith Brown. 202 But for some other historians, James Manner, for example, the demise of the princely states was historically inevitable, for those archaic autocratic regimes were already relics of the past and did not deserve another lease of life. The paradox of two different Indias, writes Manner, was clearly destined to pass away. 203 In new independent India, few shed tears for the hapless princes, whose luck had now clearly run out. Demission of power in India did not, however, immediately mean the end of Britain's imperial ambitions, as the old notion of empire now evolved into the more dynamic concept of the Commonwealth of Nations, where old colonies would be, in no way subordinate in any aspect of domestic or external affairs, but would be, freely associated and united by common allegiance to the Crown. 204 Mountbatten took it as a personal mission to persuade India to accept dominion status and remain within the Commonwealth. India in 194-7 found its hands forced to some extent when Pakistan accepted the Commonwealth membership, but the new constitution, promulgated on 26 January 1950, proclaimed India a republic. However, British pragmatism, as D. George Boyce has argued, managed to overcome this challenge to the Crown, so central to the whole